Let's break down some scapular movements and articulations, or movement of the shoulder blades on the back when it comes to our upper body lifts. So I posted a video a couple weeks ago about scapular elevation and depression and how that articulation influences some vertical pulling, chin-ups and pull-ups, and overhead movements like press. Today, we're going to talk about scapular retraction and protraction and how that applies to horizontal pushing and pulling. So scapular retraction is pulling the shoulder blades together or towards the spine along the back, and scapular protraction is pulling those shoulder blades away from the spine. Retract, protract. Now, contrary to popular belief, in the bench press, the scapula don't need to stay locked into retraction the entire time. In order to get the most out of that movement, we also need some scapular protraction that's naturally going to happen as you go into your press. So let's explore that retraction and protraction and how to feel and use those articulations of the scapula in your bench press. So we are going to start in an open chain movement. So against a wall, you can grab something like a stick. So I'll show you both versions. But basically, we're just going to work on that protraction and retraction to and from the wall. So the arms are going to stay straight the entire time. So I'm going to basically press my hands out like this against the wall. And then you want to back up like an inch or so. So I'll show you from this angle. If I'm against the wall here, you can also punch fists into the wall with the palms facing in. And you want to back up like an inch or two. Okay, so from here, arms are straight and you want those fists to be straight out in front of the shoulders. We're going to protract the scapula and reach towards the wall. So you're going to try to reach for the wall by pulling the shoulder blades apart. So we're not reaching one arm versus the other. We're reaching both at the same time, and we're not extending those hands or anything. We are keeping the elbows straight. This is all happening from the scapula. Then we're going to retract away from the wall. So you're going to pull your fists away from the wall by retracting the scapula, but careful not to bend those elbows. So we're really isolating those scapula here. And then we can protract again towards the wall and retract. So I'll show you with a stick. If you have something like a stick, this can help you feel those scapula. Now, it's important that we also think about that elevation and depression of the scapula, retract. So most of your upper body movements are going to do better if you focus on depressing those shoulder blades. So before you even start protracting or retracting, make sure that those shoulder blades are pulled away from the ears, and then keep that as you protract and retract. So as you protract, try not to let the shoulders creep up towards the ears, and as you retract, same thing, try not to let those shoulders come up towards the ears. We're going to do two more. Protracting, reaching for the wall. Retract, pull away from the wall. And one more time. Protract to the wall and retract away from the wall. Okay, shake it out. So you may have felt some fatigue creeping up in those shoulders, which is totally normal. Some key points to remember: we are focusing on not elevating those scapula. We want to keep the scapula depressed as we're protracting and retracting. And we also want to isolate the spine. So the spine is going to, for the most part, stay in the same position. So the spine is going to stabilize the entire movement, and the scapula is going to influence and initiate the movement of the upper body. So the spine, we want to stay extended. So we don't really want round spine as we're doing most of our lifts. Most of the time we want that extended spine, especially for the examples that we're giving today, like the push-up, bench press, and row. So let's take this scapular protraction, retraction in our open chain, and let's apply that to our row position. So let's just get into a very basic bent over row position. You can keep your stick or you can place it to the side for now. We're just gonna go into a hip hinge, reaching those hips up and back, and then the fists are gonna reach down towards the floor. So gravity is gonna help pull those scapula into protraction, especially if you have external load. We're just going to do scapular rows, so the elbows are going to stay straight as we do this movement. So all we're going to do from here, again, making sure that the shoulders are not sliding up towards the ears, making sure that the spine is not too round in this position or moving as we move our scapula, right? Spine is solid, shoulders away from the ears. Let's go to our retraction. We're going to pull into retraction, squeezing the shoulder blades together. Now, as we retract, it can sometimes go into some extra spinal extension. Let's try not to let that happen. You're really gliding the scapula along the back, and you almost want to feel like the ribs and the hips are connected with a rubber band there. And then let's protract, reach down. And again, scapular retraction and scapular protraction. If you're holding your stick, this is similar to a barbell scapular row. Retracting, pulling the shoulder blades together, and protracting. Gravity is assisting with the protraction, and you're working against gravity for that retraction. And protract. We're going to do that one more time. Retract and protract. Okay, and take a rest. So we always want to make sure that we are able to feel and control these movements of the scapula. We are really breaking these upper body movements down to their very basic form and very basic elements. This is the most important element of that upper body movement because the scapula is what connects everything in your upper body to your back. If the scapula are able to move and you're able to control that movement of the scapula, then you're going to reduce the risk of injuries in the upper body. Once we get this movement of the scapula down, we can move it into our full upper body movements for a seamless lift. That is also not going to injure you, right? If we understand how the scapula move, then the rest of the body will follow. So let's take this scapular retraction, protraction into a row. So we're going to keep going into that retraction of the scapula all the way till the elbows bend and we're pulling weight off of the floor. So again, we could do this with the stick or hands, and then we'll try it with some external load as well. So from that hinge position, let's go into our retraction. Now, as you row, we're not just going to keep that retraction there. We're going to keep retracting those scapula as we row and pull those elbows up. And then as we let that weight or that stick or those hands fall back to the ground, we're just going to naturally fall into that protraction. So you don't need to think about really initiating that protraction right away. We can just slowly let the retraction fade until you're in your protraction again at the bottom. Then we start again, retract, keep retracting. So I find more and more retraction if my elbows bend, right? If we were reaching for the wall, the more we wanted to retract, the more those elbows wanted to bend. So now we're using that to our advantage with this movement pattern. And let it fall. Let's do two more. I'll show you without the stick, right? We retract, keep retracting as those elbows drive up without overarching that spine. Control that movement. And we can go one more. Retract, keep retracting as we pull, and then slowly let it fade away. Okay, so now let's add some external load. We're going to do 3 scapular rows, and then we'll do 3 nice and slow all the way into that row. All right, so we're using a nice light external load for this since we're really just exploring this movement. So we'll go back into that hinge and let's do 3 scapular and 3 full bent over rows. So we'll go scapular first. Pull the shoulder blades together. Again, we're working against gravity for that retraction. Now let's add that to the row. So we'll retract, keep retracting as we pull. And then as the arms extend, that protraction will naturally happen. Retract, keep retracting as we pull. Get a nice hold in there since we've got some really light load. And then again, retract, really hold at the top here, feel the retraction. And then slowly let that release. So that's how our scapula influence our row position. Let's take that same open chain movement, but apply it to our bench press or dumbbell chest press. So as you go into the bottom of your chest press, it's exactly the same movement as going into the top of your row. Okay, so we are just flipping this around. So now you're lying on your back. You've got that spine extended. We're squeezing the shoulder blades together and pulling down into the bottom of that bench press to then press out of it. So we're going to start exactly the same way, but now lying on your back. So if you have a bench, you could do this on the floor as well. Okay. We want this spine extension to be there to help transfer force from the legs through the spine to the upper body. And we want that spine extension there to help with that retraction of the scapula. The retraction of the scapula adds stability to this movement. And again, additional force production and transfer from the body and the spine into your press. So from this position, we're lying down either on the floor or on your bench. We're going to find that scapular retraction from arms extended over the chest. We're going to retract and hold. And then we're going to find the protraction. So again, we are focusing on keeping the spine nice and stable. Again, that's going to help stabilize the movement. It's going to help transfer force from the legs and the spine to the upper body. Protract. And again, remember that retraction adds stability to the shoulder, especially as we are benching heavy loads. Let's do 2 more. Retract. Protract. Last one. Retract. And protract. So the other reason I'm having you do this lying down is because with that extra spine extension, you're going to find that the range of motion in that protraction is not exactly as large as if we're doing this standing up. And that's the point. Your scapula will naturally protract as you go into your upper body press, your chest press, but we are not over accentuating that protraction because again, that's going to lose stability of the movement for you, right? We want to keep some stability, but we need that protraction to help push. The muscles that are involved with the protraction of the scapula are the serratus anterior, right? Sometimes if you see the muscles, it looks like rib cage muscles, or sometimes we call them the boxer muscles here. And the pecs, minor and major. So we really want that protraction to happen in the bench press because that's going to add strength to the movement. We need those pec muscles and serratus anterior muscles to push more weight over your chest. So staying in retraction is not an efficient way of thinking about our bench press. Let's do a few more scapular bench press. I'll show you with the stick, and then we're gonna bring that into the full movement. All right, so I've got my stick here. I've got my extension of the spine. I'm gonna retract and keep retracting as I pull to my chest. Now at the bottom, I feel nice and stable here because I've got that retraction, which also helps influence that external rotation of the shoulder, which is gonna keep the elbows under the wrists. And then from here, I push up. So I lose that retraction, which is ideal. We need to lose some of that retraction to push the bar over your chest and to fully extend the elbows. But I'm not accentuating the protraction here, right? Keep that spine extended. Let's go again. Pull into retraction. Keep retracting as you drive those elbows down. And from the bottom, we're going to push up. Allow that protraction to naturally happen. Pull those scapula together, keep retracting down, and push up. Let's do that one more time. Pull to the chest, and push. Because we've done the rows before this, that's a little easier to understand, especially if you've done a lot of bench presses and chest presses. So let's add some external load. We will do our scapular bench press first for 3 and then the full movement pattern. I'm imagining I have my barbell here. Let's do a few retraction, protraction here so we can squeeze those shoulder blades together, retract and protract while keeping that extension. Retract, protract, and retract, protract. I'm going to retract, pull down to the chest, keep retracting as I pull, and then push up. Allow that protraction to happen, but not that spinal flexion. pull and retract down. That's going to stabilize the shoulders. It's going to add to that force transfer. Pulling down. And so what if we take this into a closed chain movement? Both the row and the bench press are open chain movements. Our body is staying still while the weight is being moved. What if we move our body to the immovable object? What if we do this in a closed chain position, which is a push-up or an inverted row? I'm going to show a push-up. So we are going to start with that retraction, protraction again, this time from a hands and knees position. So now we're not pulling the arms away from the surface. We are retracting and protracting, and that's going to influence how our body moves. So as we retract our scapula in this quadruped position, it kind of pulls the chest down towards the floor, right? Which reminds you of your push-up. That's the first step of your push-up, is that retraction. Squeezing those shoulder blades together. Then as we protract, the chest kind of goes away from the floor here. Retract. Now this is where it's really hard to keep the elbows straight and to keep the spine neutral, or to keep the spine extended even though that chest is moving through space. So I like to think about kind of sinking that chest towards the floor actively, so pulling that chest towards the floor, and then pushing the floor away from you. Okay, these take a little while to understand and feel. That's why we do the open chain movements first. Retract and protract. Okay, so now what if we take that retraction and protraction and apply it to our full plank? So if the quadruped was enough for you, if you're still trying to figure that out, stick with that progression. If you are ready to move on, we'll do this in a full plank. Retract. Notice how the retraction is kind of small, and then the protraction. I love plank scapular retraction, protraction, because you're really able to feel as you protract that serratus anterior pushing as you go into that protraction. Let's do a few more. Retract, protract, retract, protract. Last one, retract, protract. A lot of times when we think of improving posture or improving upper body movement, we think a lot about the retraction and the depression of the scapula, but we leave the protraction out of it. And that serratus anterior muscle is really important actually for your posture, for your spine and upper body health. So we really want to work into that protraction. And these scapular push-ups are a great way to do that, especially if you are newer to that protraction and that serratus anterior muscle. So let's apply this to our full push-up movement. We're gonna retract, and same as the bench press, I want you to think about pulling or rowing yourself down to the floor. And from the bottom of that movement, again, as we come up, we're gonna have that natural protraction happen because we want those muscles, your pecs, and the serratus anterior to help press you back up. So we need that scapular protraction to happen. Those are the muscles that perform that protraction. But from there, I also want you to think about gripping the floor with your fingertips to go into that push. So we're gonna try 3 really nice and slow, okay? And if you are working on those last progressions, then you can watch these ones or try those last progressions again. So from our full plank here, now in your full plank, I always coach to protract the scapula, right? So in your plank, if the scapula are retracted, it's just gonna promote this hip dropping or chin protruding. So I always coach the protraction of the scapula at the top of the plank and some slight concaveness in the torso. Anyway, so let's retract. That's your first movement of your push-up, and you're gonna pull yourself down to the floor. Once we've reached the bottom, you're gonna exhale and press down into the floor. Allow that protraction to happen. So by the top, we're in that slight protracted position. And let's try that 2 more times. Retract. Keep retracting as you pull yourself down and push into that scapular protraction. Let's go 1 more time. Retract. Control the descent. Hold and push. So a big compensation that we see in push-ups a lot is that allowing the shoulders to go into that elevation as we come down. So we want to think depression of the scapula before the retraction. Always keep that in mind. I hope you learned something about your scapular retraction and protraction today. If you have any questions on these movements, drop them in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.